military commander is not he who fights 100 battles and wins every one of them. The best military strategy does not lead to the desiccation of the enemy's capital city. Decoding the art of war will help you understand why there's no art in war and how Sun Tzu stayed undefeatable using the science of war, with fun stories and insightful breakdown of famous battles. Tune in to Decoding the Art of War on Spotify.
You're listening to The Break.
This is from the article, Military Families, Older Americans, and Rural Residents are most at risk, with military families accounting for, and this is from the CNN article, almost half of EP subscriber base. So one thing that Americans generally get behind is that military personnel, and I think this is true in most countries, there's a great deal of respect for people who go out there and spend years of their time protecting their home country. So there's a great deal of respect for a military family, so I think it's also going to incentivize Congress to pass this bill. So I think it will probably end up getting passed because the elected representatives don't want to be seen as anti-veterans. But one thing that's concerning for me, a larger picture here is this, even if they do pass this and save this bill, there's a larger issue. America is still way behind on internet speed. Now, if you have, plug-in, totally wired computers that are hooked up to, or you have your own personal Wi-Fi system in your house, a Wi-Fi emitter, that's fine. But if you're pulling internet out of the air, which is a lot of the case in rural areas especially, then it's much more expensive. So, and it's also, it works less well. So yes, if you're living in a major American city, your internet is pretty fast because you're not using Wi-Fi. You're plugged into the matrix, right? But if you don't have access to that, if you're pulling it out of the air, then the quality is considerably behind the rest of the world. Because even though like the UK and a few other countries were like, okay, America, we will cooperate with Huawei, most of the world did buy Huawei telecommunications infrastructure. And so there are places in like Africa, South America, Central America, which have way faster internet than America has. And it's really bizarre. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're trying to grow your economy, you want to have everyone have access to the latest most cutting-edge technology. And it's another one of those things, like rail, where the United States has not been investing in its infrastructure, and it just keeps falling behind. And one of the reasons it does that is because it's like, we're not going to buy this from that other country. We're not going to buy that from this other country. We're going to sanction those people and those people.
Free market.
And yeah, exactly. So they're cutting themselves off from technologies that are already outpacing them in in developing countries. Developing countries in some cases have better infrastructure than the United States. Nigeria has high-speed rail. The United States does not have high-speed rail. That's, bizarre.
It's a really ongoing argument. A lot of people are saying, the U.S. phone, especially mobile data speed, is faster, and the Wi-Fi is slower. I haven't been back for a long time. I really want to go and see how everything is for myself, so I can stand by whatever argument I have with proof and say, hey, I have both, I've experienced both, and it's really not that fast. I would love to see it, because some of my friends are, huge supporters of the mobile data speed in the United States. They say it's a lot faster, but we'll see.
Well, I get this feeling when I go back to the United States periodically, every few years, that it's exactly the same as when I left it. Which is not bad or not great, it's like I show up and I'm like,
it's nostalgic.
Yeah. Yes, nostalgic. It's like nothing changed. Always. The same Taco Bell there and the same diner there. And I was on Amtrak. I used to take Amtrak a lot when I was in the States. Yay, Amtrak. It's great. For someone who doesn't like cars, I could travel to a distant location and be on a train, and it was almost like romantic to myself. Of traveling alone, I'm romantic time with myself. That sounds weird. But I would be like on the car reading a book, and I was like, hey, I get there, and it's great. I get off the train, and I'm in another city. Yeah. Then I came to China, and I'm like traveling at 350 kilometers per hour, watching the ground around me fly by so fast you can't make out things that are too close. It's just a blur. And then like I go back, right? I'm like, wow, this Amtrak is like ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk. It's like, oh my god. It's like you need that perspective, that context of traveling to like Europe or Japan or China to feel like what modernity really is like before you realize how ancient American infrastructure really is.
And to add on that, I think you definitely heard about the speed raising for the bullet train between Beijing and Shanghai. They're going to be able to travel at the speed of 400 kilometers per hour very soon. That means from Beijing to Shanghai, if you take the bullet train, it'll only take you 2.5 hours.
It's actually a completely different line they're building a maglev line. It's going to be capable of 600, but it's probably going to be like 450.
That's insane.
Usually they push the train really hard on its first few days of opening, and then slow it down to its normal speed. So most like the trains that we take that are 350 kilometers per hour right now in China, they're capable of traveling 450. But for safety reasons and so forth, and
they don't go.
They travel safer. But the maglev line is going to be capable of much faster speeds. It's going to travel at slower.
That's scarily fast.
Yeah, it's frightening. It's faster than an airplane if it was going above its actual the speeds that they're going to use it for. So you're going to and there's I was talking to this guy David Fung. He is called the train guy. He loves this name. Actually, I think he calls himself the trains guy because he says the different kinds of trains. So he is an expert from Sweden who lives here in China, and he writes reports about trains and does podcasts about trains, and he works with the train authorities here in China, helping them name the stations and do the signage and stuff like that in English or other languages, and helps them with their website and so forth. He's a consultant kind of, and he said that there are already these cordoned off areas between Chongqing, Shanghai, Beijing, and I can't remember the other city. Maybe it's Guangzhou.
That's crazy.
And there are going to be maglev lines between all of them. By 2035, there will be what he says ultra high-speed trains. And I said, oh, is that going to be all maglev? And he said, maybe some of it will be hyper. So, so China may have Hyperloop and or maglev very, very soon. The Shanghai-Beijing line is the first line of the super high-speed train. I mean, we're supposed to be talking about internet. What's really cool is if you're on, I think a lot of people might be surprised by this, if you're on these currently existing 45,000 kilometers of Chinese high-speed rail, some of which travels at 250 kilometers per hour, some of which travels at 350 kilometers per hour, there's Wi-Fi on the train. So you don't even have to have Jason's goofy gadget.
Yeah.
You can just sit down and lock in Wi-Fi and start playing on the internet.
And it's all free, and you don't have to pay for anything. You don't have to have a...
Well, you pay for your ticket.
If you put it that way, then it's quite expensive. Wi-Fi, Jason.
Yeah, but it's really cool because, you can be traveling. You get traveling between two cities almost as fast as an airplane. And the whole time you're locked into Wi-Fi. I would rather travel by train and have Wi-Fi the whole time than get on a plane and just be like, this is the movie? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, pretty much. And then the Wi-Fi, it really, a lot of people, just very quickly, a lot of people like to travel on the bullet train, not just because of an easier security check process. A lot of people, they're able to work on the bullet train if they're just doing, like a business trip intercity. Then they just spend the hour where they're waiting for the train that they're not on the computer for, and then once they get on the train, they just pull out their laptop and they start working, and you see that a lot.
For me, I can really just work on my phone at this point. Like, phones are so advanced, I don't even need to pull out my... I bring a laptop usually for the hotel. Like I set up my gear at the hotel. I have the full office there. But on the trains, I'm just like on the phone. That's fine. Okay, so in terms of Wi-Fi in the U.S., I think that there's so much more to the story than just, because I think you have 1 in 6 people being affected, 1 in 6 families being affected, 1 in 5 families being affected. And most people are probably going to be like, okay, what do I have to do? I guess I just have to press or whatever to make work.
That's so insane to think.
It is insane. For millions of Americans, their solution, because they still need to access the internet, like you mentioned, it's not going to be to pop open their phone and use their SIM card, because that's too expensive if they can already not afford home Wi-Fi. So a lot of them are going to be going to libraries So U.S. public libraries, instead of being a place for books, are going to be a place for people who come to the internet. And so I read this in an article that people are going to be showing up at libraries or parking in fast food restaurants or outside of Starbucks in their cars using Wi-Fi. So your grandmother, if this bill doesn't pass, will have to go into town and hang out at the library instead of sitting on the sofa from the comfort of their own home.
Yeah, it's going to cost money too because they have to
Put gas in the car.
drive there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an all-around kind of unhealthy situation. I've got another story.
Yes.
This is Michelle McDonough. This is from the same CNN article. 49 years old, works part-time at a tobacco shop in Maine and lives off Social Security disability payments. She is one statistics class away from earning an associate's degree in behavioral health, but she goes online virtually to take those classes, and she meets people through telehealth visits. But if the bill doesn't pass, she will not be able to finish her degree, and she will be cut off from the opportunity to work from home. So she will remain on disability instead of becoming a participant in the economy, where she becomes a behavioral health specialist. So we're literally hurting people's opportunity to be taken off of government.
This is what I don't really understand. Maybe I don't know enough. But see, let's say we have a problem here. In China, let's say, we have a problem there that it's affecting how people could survive. Usually, if policy is carried out by the government, the policy just kind of works, because it has considered or calculated whatever that's needed for this to happen. And it's never the case where the government says, oh, this doesn't work for people to survive. Let's raise money. Let's somehow find this money, and let's just give people quote-unquote discount on what they need to pay for. But there's only so much. If you can't find other sources, then this plan has to stop, and then it's not my fault. It becomes kind of like, okay, I'm only going to be responsible for it for a couple of years, and as long as that makes sense, and then that bill gets passed, it just seems too periodical, or it just feels too short-term to be a good solution. I remember I felt the same way when the U.S. said that they were going to give their citizens just cash money for COVID. That's going to help with unemployment. I'm like, no, it's not going to help with unemployment. Just because you give them 1 month of groceries and utilities, it's not going to just automatically magically bring them back to their feet and stop their problems for the next 4 or 3 months. I don't know. It always seems like a very temporary solution that's been put in place for very critical issues.
I completely agree with you. I think most people actually agree that it was a mistake to give those cash handouts. It should have come in the form of different kinds of help that was rolled out by the government. Plus, there was an enormous amount of corruption. But, talking about the kind of band-aid approaches, even this bill, which I think should be passed, while other things, the Affordable Connectivity Program, it's my personal opinion of it. It should probably be passed. There's a much bigger issue here. We've touched on it quite a bit. The United States needs to build the telecommunications infrastructure and break up some of the huge companies that are requisite to bringing better quality Wi-Fi service to the United States that is more cost-effective. I think part of the reason they haven't, and this is just one part, is Elon Musk keeps saying he's going to make Wi-Fi magically rain from space, and that hasn't been affordable for most people. So it is helping with, if you live in the desert in the middle of Africa, I'm sure, yay, you have Wi-Fi because you can connect to Starlink and you're a wealthy person.
Yeah.
But for the average American, it's not really helping, and it's not really been the effective program that everyone was hoping that it was, because the United States tends to lean towards, let's let the free market solve it. And Elon Musk said, I'm going to solve it, and then it didn't really get solved. So I think the issue that needs, my opinion, and I think a lot of other Americans will agree with me, is the United States needs to set aside tens of billions of dollars and stop sanctioning China and other countries who already have finished developing 5.5G telecommunications equipment, and buy that telecommunications equipment, install it, and after the government has set it all up, if they want to privatize it, sell it off to different companies, break up some of the big companies, and then it will become accessible, and if the big companies are broken up so there's more competition, it will become more affordable. But sanctioning the most advanced telecommunications country in the world, China, and not investing in our own infrastructure is a recipe for, stagnation, for staying in the past, for having Wi-Fi levels and internet access at 19.
Nowadays, with a lot of these AI tools being open source and even companies that are opening up to the public, it's really a time for opening up enough companies down if you want to go forward.
Yeah. AI, it's like the new laptop, right? Or the new computer. People in the 1980s, they were like, if you want to stay relevant, get a computer and learn how to use it. And that will keep you in the company. You apply for a job, you say, I can use computers. In 1989, people are like, you're hired. Right now, that's what's going on. AI is not replacing jobs. It's replacing people who don't know how to use AI. True. So now jobs are like, can you use AI? Great, you're hired. Can you use these 5 AI programs? No. We'll have to think about whether or not we're going to hire you. So at this point in the United States, you have, if 1 in 5 families are being potentially cut off from internet access, that means 20% of Americans are going to be falling behind the global curve using the most advanced technologies in the world. So Europeans and Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, and so forth, all these other advanced countries who do have really advanced internet access, and this is really important for them, they're using the technologies that are going to lead into the 22nd century.
Yeah.
And Americans are like, I can't get on Facebook.
That's my biggest worry for a lot of these technological advancements, and I've always felt the same way that it's going to be a huge part of the population behind. And it's just because they are less, let's say, literate on, not as literate on technology as young people are. That's fine, there are ways to bring them, to keep them up to speed with things, but it's because they don't have enough time, they don't have enough access to the internet, and that's why they're being left behind. It's only going to become faster and faster. Changes are only going to happen at a faster speed as we go forward with all of these crazy technologies. And if these people can't even have the most basic access to it, because at some point now we still look at AI when I think, oh well, this is what this is a fancy stuff. You're creating this, creating that, but you also have to realize that in other aspects of our daily lives, AI is being used even more widely. Its application is even more extensive than we think, and it's soon enough, I think, that a lot of aspects of our life will require us to rely heavily on internet access. What are you going to do then? At that point, you're still going to say, oh, we don't have enough money for the program so that these people can't have internet. That'll be almost a human rights issue at that point.
That's actually a really good point, human rights issue, because despite what people may know about government, the United Nations does have policies for the way that all countries around the world are supposed to be developing. And the United States, tries, at least in part, to follow some of those guidelines. China is the good student who's always doing exactly what they're supposed to do by the way. And one of those things is called the Gini Index. And this index is an index for disparity between the wealthy and the poor. And it should not be out of a certain range in each consecutive period of time. There are conferences about how to narrow this index and to make so the poorest classes and the richest classes are not so divided. Because these kinds of divides create terrible situations where human rights are thrown in the gutter, and the rich are just like, yeah, everything's great. They don't even understand how bad the situation for the poor is. Now, obviously, if you look at different countries around the world, you have rich and poor. You look in China, you have rich and poor. And you look in the United States, you have rich and poor. So it's not like it doesn't exist. But what you said is really important. If there are people like in San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, and so forth, Chicago, etc., Seattle, and they have wonderful, screaming, fast internet plugged into the wall, and they're doing great things with AI and advancing their own careers and stuff. And then you have someone in rural Arizona living out in the desert, and they have nothing, and the only access they have to the internet is driving their car to the local library. Then you're creating the conditions that cause disparity. Here's an article on that. This is from Brookings.edu, that's an education website, Blair Levin. The end of the Affordable Connectivity Program is almost here, threatening to widen the digital divide. And so this is an argument people are already realizing, and it also mentions in the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, provides $30 per month subsidy. So it helps these 23 million homes who run out, according to this article, who would run out of funds sometime in April or May of 2024. So if it doesn't get renewed, then essentially we're going to create a new way in which disparity increases. We can create a new way in which the United States becomes more of those who have and those who don't have. And this is already a problem in the United States for so many other reasons. Like we have huge amounts of billionaires, and we have about 1 million people who are homeless. Officially, the figure is 650,000. Most people agree that the amount of homeless people is vastly underreported and understood. There may be 1 or 2 million people living in tent cities all across America, Los Angeles, Seattle. But I mean, we're literally making the conditions to make this potentially worse by not giving people access to the internet. And this is not just about, it should be, it's not just about these homeless people or the potential future homeless people or the people who are increasingly falling under the American machine as it rolls forward. It's not just about them. It's also about America. Because if they're cut off from these skills, these technologies, from the opportunity to take classes online and improve their lives and get jobs online and have work online, then the U.S. economy suffers, and that affects everyone in the United States. So if the United States, if the lawmakers, if the leaders of our country want America to succeed, whatever they think about the poor, if they want America to succeed, then they need to help these people participate in the digital economy, because increasingly the digital economy is a huge pillar of the actual economy.
Think about the digital divide. I like the alliteration as well. Just a personal pet peeve. Think about the digital divide that is getting wider. Nowadays, they're already, if you need to go look for a job, you need to go, they ask you to e-sign, they ask you to send in your stuff, they ask you to email them, and these things, we hear it as something that just happens so often, and yes, you just go, yeah, sure, without even thinking, because internet access is never something that you have to worry about, right? If these people in the future, if they were indeed affected by the stopping of the program, it'll be kind of crazy for them to, if they want to step up, if they want to change their life, they want to move themselves up further, and internet ends up being something that blocks them from getting that, it'll be a little bit like a joke. For me, it's kind of like, hey, people need to ride the subway, but instead of like going and spending money making the subway infrastructure really, really, really accessible, and find a way to make it work, find a business model, do the math, and make the whole thing work. And let's try to bring the price down to a point where most people can ride the subway. Instead, they're like, you know what? This is the math that we did. And so the rich people or people that can have it, they'll just have to pay for this like a really high price to access it. Other people, we don't want them to completely be cast out of the subway system. Let's give them a little discount, but the discount is limited. This is our solution to the whole problem. I think it's a great analogy that I could come up, and it really goes back to the point where how you spend. I think, of course, this money right now, there needs to be more money that goes into the program so that these people can maintain their access to the internet. But what's the ultimate solution to this problem? I think infrastructure really is one of the most viable answers.
I completely agree with you. I think that's actually a huge difference between the way that China operates and the way the United States operates. Now, I'm not going to say, America's capitalist and China is socialist. It's not exactly accurate. The United States is actually quite socialist. We have a lot of socialist programs. We have all kinds of Medicare, Medi-Cal in California, and there's Social Security.
Oh God, they have Medi-Cal.
They have their own medical programs. And we have all kinds of socialist programs in the United States, and this is kind of a socialist program. It's like providing internet for the people with the least amount of access who are in the worst kind of conditions, and so we can make sure that they don't fall so far behind. So that, the United States is not this pure capitalist place that people imagine. It is a kind of socialist economy. It has elements of socialism mixed up, and the thing about it is, China is like, okay, we need 45, we want high-speed rail. So the government's like, okay, we're building high-speed rail. And that's great because it has SOEs It has a mixed economy, and so it's able to just like make command decisions. The government builds it out, and then in some cases it privatizes it or puts it in the hands of SOEs and so forth. But the United States is more reticent about their philosophy. There are a lot of leaders who are like, oh, no, you need to let the market handle everything. So we're not going to do that, we're not going to do this, and we're not going to do these other things. But what's happened is the United States is falling behind. Not just behind China, but behind Europe, behind all these other countries all over the world, which are more prone to like, okay, we are going to build rail, and that's going to be a government thing. Maybe or maybe not, we will privatize it in some way or shape or another. And so all these other countries are building stuff, and the United States is just like, don't worry, the right CEO is going to come along and make it all magically happen. And this magical thinking, this faith in this invisible hand is holding the United States.
Yeah, oh my God.
And so, we Americans are already a kind of socialist economy. We just have to extend it to a couple more things, like infrastructure. And then, hey, the United States can keep up with the rest of the world. But as it is, the United States is falling behind. And that is not something I think most Americans are prepared to handle. And so I think there's a huge debate going on. The people who are like, we need schools and high-speed rail and telecommunications, their voices are drowned out by these other people who are saying, no, the free market will do it for us. It's not.
And you know what? It's really sad. Maybe this is naive for me to say. Maybe it's just uneducated or unsophisticated for me to say. But a lot of times when things are put in labels, you give yourself these walls, you put yourself in these boxes of what I can or cannot do. And honestly, at this point, I think I'm constantly being paranoid of the day where, like, AI breaks that limit of being sentient or whatever, and it starts to really create things. And there's going to be two parallel universes where people who didn't catch up, who didn't get to jump on the bandwagon, and go forward with the technology advancement, and versus people who are lucky enough to always be in that. And imagine how big of a gap there is going to be between these two groups of people. Maybe we can't even, because right now a lot of us can't even imagine how much more AI can do, and how fast it's going to evolve and develop. And at that point, I feel like a lot of the basic things, it's really not about whether who's capitalist or who's socialist and stuff. It's about, as a government, what's your function? Are you going to keep this country moving forward? Yeah, sure. If you want to keep this country moving forward, if you want to keep it as a country and a stable society, then these are things that you have to do. It's not about socialism or capitalism. It's not about the labels. But, scholars or social scientists might disagree, politicians might disagree, but as just a member of the society, as one of the citizens, the civilians that's just trying to make ends meet and trying to survive, I don't think people care so much about whether this is a socialist policy, this is a capitalist policy. We want to have food on our table and internet in our house and our mobile devices so that we can stay connected to the world. It's simple as that.
I agree with you. I think most common sense people also feel that way. Probably most Americans, if you say, okay, what defines socialism? You have no idea. But I want to make 2 points that I think are interesting. One is, this is from an article. That's the same one that I was reading. And before the connectivity program is almost year-driven to widely divide. And it mentions in the article, and it is the point that I was kind of making before, that and it is not just those families who will bear the cost. And then it says, a recent economics working paper estimated that for every dollar spent on the ACP, the nation's GDP increases by $3.81. So we're literally getting almost 4 times back for investing into this program to help people. And that's ignoring the fact that it helps people, which are, I think should matter. I think it should matter that there's an old lady like in the countryside who can't call her grandkids. I think that matters. But if we're just looking at it from a national perspective, it's actually a compound increaser of wealth for the country. So, I mean, there's that. I want to talk about something else, though, because you keep bringing up AI, and I think it's a really relevant point in terms of, we're talking about internet access.
It is.
I was watching a speech by the president of Cuba, and he mentioned that we are at a point where we don't need coders. He said, in the 1990s, I told people, teach your kids to code. Now I would tell them, don't teach your kids to code. And he said, we're at the point where the loop is closed, anything a coder can do can be done without a coder.
Wow.
He mentioned a kind of software that makes apps. It's an app for making apps. So I went online and I found this app for making apps. And basically you draw a picture on a sheet of paper with words that describe what each part of your picture that you've drawn should do. Take a picture and upload it to the app, and then it automatically generates a version of the app that you envisioned. And you could just change the colors and shapes and sizes, and then you have created an app that will do the things that you imagined, and it will automatically generate a completely new app for you out of thin air. I did this. I created one of the, this program already exists, but I created a program that creates a moving wallpaper that exists behind your icons. It generated an application that can do that. So now I can go to YouTube and download like, a 10-second clip of something cool, and then put it into this application that it automatically generated for me, and that is my wallpaper. And even though that already exists, I just was doing it as a test to see if I could do it using AI. So AI literally has the ability to make applications out of thin air without the ability to code. So it's just remarkable. And so these people who don't have access to the internet, they're like generations behind where we are moving.
Exactly.
We need to ensure that all people everywhere have access to the internet, because things are happening so fast that it's head spinning.
Yeah, imagine if you say, this is conversation. Oh, did you see this thing that it's really helpful? You want to change your life? Or you're having a really an ankle problem? Oh, there's one way that's going to help you solve it really fast. You just need to go do this. Oh, you don't know how to do that? Go on YouTube and watch a video.
Right.
And the person goes, let me find where I can have unlimited data, unlimited.
On Sunday, I'm going to the library.
Yeah, watch it.
Yeah, and also it mentions in the same article, last thought on this, this is that telehealth for patients with cancer range between $147 and $186 per visit. But according to the University of Pennsylvania, showing that telemedicine was 23% less expensive than in-person visits. So you can call your doctor on the internet, have a Skype call or a Zoom call or whatever they're using these days, and talk to your doctor and get, advice about your condition for considerably less money and then driving to the hospital, number one, paying for all the gas to go, and then paying your hospital visit, and then driving home. So, and plus, in addition to losing the time, you lose the gas money, and you have to pay a higher bill. But if you could just do it from home, 5 minutes passes by, now you are able to maybe take the advice of your physician and move on with your life. So it impacts people in so many different ways. I would like to hear your opinion, listener. Please let us know what you think we got wrong, what got right, or what you would like to add to this conversation. We would be happy to read your comments on the air. Please email us at welovethebridge@gmail.com. Thank you so much for your time, listeners. Thank you so much for your time, Alex.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone. And hearing infinite.
Program 2